Welcome to the Human Rights Watch Turkey podcast. In every episode, we delve into significant human rights violation claims, giving voice to those who have endured injustice. Our mission is to shine a light on their stories, ensuring that the victims and their families are heard with dignity and respect. But our goal goes further. We strive to amplify these voices beyond Turkey, bringing their stories to the attention of the international community. Hosted by Google's Notebook, LLM AI-generated personas, we approach each case with empathy and curiosity, analyzing claims and narratives through the lens of the victims while also exploring broader human rights contexts. While we take great care and conduct preliminary checks before presenting each case, we want to emphasize that our primary mission is to give a platform to those who claim to have been victimized. Through this platform, we aim to ensure these stories are heard, understood, and acted upon globally. Together, we can foster reflection, accountability, and action for a more just world. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin.
Welcome to the deep dive. We like to really get into the weeds of these complex topics and kind of find the hidden gems you wouldn't see if you were just, casually browsing the news. And today we're looking at Şerif Mesutoğlu. He's currently imprisoned in Turkey and accused of murdering his superior Kaymakam Muhammed Fatih Safi Türk. For this deep dive, our main source is this Turkish language Twitter Spaces event hosted by the Conscience Foundation. And the main voice we're hearing from is Saime Mesutoğlu, that's Şerif's wife.
Right.
And she firmly believes that he was framed.
What's so interesting about this case is that she is not the only one. Also participating in this Twitter Spaces event is Ömer Faruk Gergerlioğlu, a member of the Turkish parliament, who did an independent investigation of the case.
Yeah.
And he also has concerns about Şerif being framed for the murder.
Yeah, it's not just a he said, she said kind of thing. There's actually layers of stuff going on here, like alleged corruption and really, really questionable evidence. So to kind of set the scene, this whole thing started on November 16th, 2016. There was a bombing at the Derek District Governorship building, and the district governor, Kaymakam Muhammed Fatih Safi Türk, was injured.
Okay.
And Şerif Mesutoğlu, a staff member, was actually there during the bombing and helped rescue the Kaymakam.
See, that's what's so interesting. If he really was the one who was behind this bombing, why would he be there?
Right. Why would he help?
Yeah, why would he put himself in danger to save the Kaymakam? I mean, this is a major contradiction to the story that the prosecution is putting forward.
Exactly. And the inconsistencies don't stop there. When you look at the investigation itself, there are all these irregularities. For starters, the crime scene was cleaned before forensic investigators got there.
Oh, wow.
Which could have destroyed so much evidence.
Yeah, how can you have a fair investigation if they're already tampering with the crime scene?
Exactly.
It makes you think, were they trying to hide something?
Yeah, it's very suspicious.
Could be that cleaning up the crime scene was a way to make sure that the evidence didn't point away from Şerif.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the actual evidence itself. A glove and a remote control supposedly link Şerif to this bombing. But get this, they were discovered 48 hours after the bombing happened.
2 days later.
Yeah. It's so hard to believe that's real.
Yeah. It definitely makes you wonder, did somebody plant that evidence to frame him?
And then to make matters worse, a later report found that the fingerprints on that remote control did not belong to Şerif.
Okay.
But this report was conveniently left out of the case file.
You're kidding. Withholding evidence, that's a huge violation of due process. I mean, what else could they be hiding? What are they so afraid of?
That's the question, isn't it? It's like someone really wants Şerif to be guilty no matter what. And if that wasn't enough, there's all this weirdness surrounding the Kaymakam's medical care after the bombing. Some of the doctors who treated him actually believe that he was moved to a facility with a lower chance of survival on purpose.
So you're saying there might be foul play even beyond the bombing itself? Like,
Yeah.
maybe somebody wanted to make sure the Kaymakam didn't recover.
Yeah, maybe to silence him.
This case just keeps getting more and more complicated.
It really does. And then on top of all of that, key pieces of evidence like the Kaymakam's phone and his hospital records were deemed unusable.
Unusable? How convenient.
Right. Because of damage or technical malfunctions.
So many coincidences, right?
Yeah. It makes you wonder if they're just trying to erase anything that contradicts their story.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a lot about the evidence or lack thereof, but what about Şerif and Saime? What was happening to them during all of this?
Well, according to Saime, both she and Şerif were detained for 29 days. And she claims that Şerif was tortured during that time, both physically and psychologically, to try and get a confession out of him or to get him to implicate other people.
Wow, it's hard to remember sometimes that there are real people behind all this.
Yeah.
And that they're going through something truly awful.
Saime also says that they threatened her and their children to try and get Şerif to confess.
Oh my God.
That's, if it's true, a complete violation of their basic human rights. Like, this just keeps getting worse and worse.
It's just awful. And the thing is, even after all of that, Saime never stopped believing Şerif.
I mean, can you imagine
Yeah.
facing all that pressure and still believing in your husband?
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason for that.
It shows how deeply she believes in him, and it makes you wonder if she wouldn't fight this hard if she wasn't sure that he was innocent.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to their love, and it just makes this whole case even more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But Saime wasn't the only one taking action. Şerif also tried to get his story out.
He did.
He did. He went on hunger strikes, multiple hunger strikes, even tried to set himself on fire.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a pretty desperate move.
Yeah, like a cry for help. He's trapped.
Mm-hmm.
He feels totally unjustly accused and like nobody's listening.
And there are even allegations that after he tried to set himself on fire, he wasn't given proper medical care. Like maybe they did that on purpose.
Wow. If that's true, that's a huge violation of his rights as a prisoner.
It's a really bleak picture. At the time of this Twitter Spaces event, Şerif was on another hunger strike, so things aren't looking good. It seems like he thinks this is his last resort.
Yeah. But why was Şerif even targeted in the first place?
This is where it gets interesting. Same. Ömer Faruk Gergelyolu and the Kaymakam's own family all have this theory that a powerful criminal organization might be the real reason behind the bombing.
A criminal organization.
Yeah. What if they were the ones who actually planned the attack?
This is getting really complicated. What were they involved in, and how would the Kaymakam be a threat to them?
So the theory is that this organization was involved in all sorts of shady stuff, like smuggling and stealing money from a refugee camp.
Oh, wow.
And the Kaymakam, he was known for being a pretty straight arrow, so he was probably looking into their business, which made him a target.
So they're saying that Şerif was just a scapegoat, a way to cover up the real perpetrators.
That's exactly what they're saying. And they claim that there was a deliberate attempt to steer the investigation away from these powerful people and blame everything on Şerif.
So basically just a massive cover-up.
That's what it looks like.
And anybody who tried to tell the truth was intimidated and threatened.
Exactly. They mention journalists, lawyers, even the Kaymakam's own family. They were all afraid to speak up.
So it sounds like we're talking about a system that's more interested in protecting powerful people than it is in finding out the truth.
Yeah, it's starting to look that way.
Wow. So this deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've seen possible corruption, manipulation, and a total disregard for human rights. This case is about so much more than just one man.
It really is. It makes you question the entire justice system in Turkey. Are there even any checks and balances to prevent this kind of abuse of power? How easy is it for someone to get caught in the system and be manipulated?
Yeah, really important questions.
We'll dive more into these broader implications after a quick break.
Sounds good. This case makes you wonder, like, is this just an isolated thing, or does it point to, like, a bigger problem with the Turkish justice system? Are there even, like, proper checks and balances in place to stop people from abusing their power? Like, what's to stop this from happening to anyone?
Those are some really big questions, and it's easy to get caught up in the investigation itself, but, we can't forget that there are real people at the heart of this.
Right.
Saime talked a lot about this in the Twitter Spaces event. Like, it wasn't just about the evidence and the legal stuff. She talked about how this whole thing has affected her family, like on a personal level.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge emotional burden, constant fear, and not knowing what's going to happen next, that takes a toll on you. And she also mentions that her son, Zanyar, who was really young when all this happened, was later diagnosed with epilepsy and Asperger's syndrome.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's impossible to say for sure whether that was caused by the trauma of this whole thing, but
Yeah, but it's definitely possible.
it's definitely something to think about.
This isn't just about trials and courtrooms. It's about real people's lives being turned upside down, families being torn apart, and the mental and emotional scars that can last a lifetime.
Exactly. And Saime's story brings up another disturbing part of this case, which is the alleged torture that Şerif went through to try to force a confession out of him.
Right.
What she described about those 29 days in detention, it's chilling. Both physical and psychological torture.
If that's true, that is just a complete violation of human rights. It makes you question the whole system.
And then, to make matters worse, they allegedly threatened Saime and the kids to pressure Şerif into confessing.
Oh, God, that's just horrible.
It's just cruel and completely unjust. But throughout all of this, Saime never gave up on Şerif. She never doubted him.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she is so strong. I mean, how do you stay so resilient in the face of all that?
It's truly inspiring, and it shows how deeply she believes in him.
Yeah.
Her story isn't just about her, though. It brings up these bigger questions about the power dynamics in the Turkish justice system. Like, is it really possible for powerful people to manipulate the legal system to get what they want?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if this could happen anywhere, like in our own countries.
Yeah.
Could someone be wrongfully imprisoned because of corruption or someone abusing their power?
It's a scary thought, but it's important to ask these questions. We can't just assume that justice will always be served.
Absolutely. We need to constantly be questioning things, scrutinizing things, and making sure that those in power are held accountable.
So what can we do to prevent these kinds of injustices from happening? Not just in Turkey, but everywhere.
Well, one thing we can do is push for stronger oversight of the justice system, like independent bodies that can investigate claims of misconduct and make sure that people who abuse their power are actually held responsible.
So it's about creating a system where no one person has too much power.
Exactly. And we need to empower regular people to be more involved in monitoring and advocating for justice, like supporting organizations like the Conscience Foundation that are working to expose human rights abuses and push for legal reforms.
It's about recognizing that we all have a responsibility to speak up when we see injustice happening and to support those who are fighting for a fairer system.
And we need to hold our elected officials accountable. They have a duty to make sure that the legal system is fair and transparent. We can't let them get away with anything less.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach. We need stronger institutions, more citizen involvement, and we need to hold our leaders accountable.
Exactly. And let's not forget about transparency. The government needs to be more open about what it's doing. Make information available to the public so that we can see how decisions are being made.
Yeah, transparency is so important for building trust. When you can see how things work, it helps prevent corruption and keeps everyone accountable.
Right. The Twitter Spaces event itself is a perfect example of what can happen when people come together and demand justice.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see. The Saime Mesutoğlu and all these other people coming together, even though it's risky for them, they believe that Şerif deserves a fair trial.
It's a reminder that even when things seem really hopeless, collective action and solidarity can make a difference.
And it reminds us that we're not alone in fighting for justice. There's power in numbers. So going back to Şerif, at the time of this Twitter Spaces event, he was on another hunger strike.
Ugh, that's so heartbreaking. He must feel so desperate.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what we can do to help.
Well, just spreading awareness is a huge first step. The more people know about Şerif's story and the problems with his case, the more pressure there is on the authorities to take a closer look and make sure justice is served.
Yeah, we all have a voice, and we can use social media and talk to our friends and family, even contact our elected officials.
Exactly. Every voice matters. And we can support organizations that are fighting for human rights and legal reform. Donate our money, whatever we can.
It's a collective effort. We all have a responsibility to fight injustice wherever we see it and work towards a world where everyone has access to a fair legal system. So this specific case, what does it tell us about the bigger picture?
Well, this deep dive has been really informative, but we're not done yet. We still need to talk about the broader implications of this case, what it says about power and justice, and how one person can make a difference. We'll get into all of that in the final part of our deep dive.
We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the case of Şerif Mesutoğlu. We've uncovered so much about the investigation, the questionable evidence, the possibility of corruption that might have led to Şerif being wrongfully imprisoned. But this isn't just about Şerif, is it? This case raises bigger questions about the justice system in Turkey and how power can be abused.
You know, one thing that really stands out to me is that it's not just Şerif's supporters who are calling for justice. Even the victim's family, Kamakam Mohammed Sefi Turk's family, they believe that Şerif might be innocent.
That's huge, right? You don't often see the family of the victim siding with the defense.
It's not common at all. And it really makes you question the whole story that the authorities are presenting. Like, if the people who are closest to the victim have doubts about the official version of events, then how can anyone be sure what really happened?
It does make you wonder if maybe they were just trying to find someone to blame quickly to make the public happy instead of actually trying to find the truth.
That's a very disturbing thought. And it shows that no justice system is perfect. There are flaws everywhere, and we need to be constantly vigilant and demanding transparency and accountability.
No matter where you live.
Exactly.
This deep dive has shown us a lot of conflicting stories, questionable evidence, and accusations of corruption that go way beyond just one man. It's a reminder that these miscarriages of justice can happen anywhere.
And if the allegations are true, Şerif's case shows a complete failure of the system. The investigation was flawed, he wasn't given due process, and it seems like the system failed to protect him from powerful people who might have wanted to silence him.
It makes you think about the bigger picture in Turkey, too. Like, what does this say about freedom of speech in the press when you have people being threatened for trying to uncover the truth?
Well, if these allegations are true, it's not a good sign. A free press is essential for holding those in power accountable and making sure things are transparent. If journalists and others are being silenced through intimidation or threats, then it creates an environment where corruption can thrive and justice is almost impossible to achieve.
It's a society ruled by fear, not by law.
Exactly. Regardless of what ultimately happens with Şerif's case, this should be a wake-up call for Turkey. They need to examine their justice system and make sure it's strong enough to resist outside pressure, whether it's political, economic, or anything else.
We've talked a lot about systemic issues, potential corruption, and the fight for justice, but what about the human element? What does this tell us about resilience and the power of just one person to make a difference?
Saime Mesutoğlu's dedication to her husband is incredibly inspiring. Despite all the pressure, the threats, the setbacks, she never gave up on her fight for justice.
It's incredible. She shows us that even when the odds are stacked against you, one person's voice can make a difference. Her determination to find the truth, to challenge the official story, to keep her husband's case in the public eye, it's kept this whole thing going and inspired others to join her.
And it also shows the importance of working together. The Conscience Foundation brought together all sorts of people for this Twitter Spaces event. Members of parliament, journalists, activists, ordinary citizens. They all believe that Şerif deserves a fair trial.
It just shows that there's strength in numbers. When people unite and support a common cause and fight injustice, it can make a real difference. Even in the darkest times, hope can emerge from that collective action and a shared belief that things can be better.
This deep dive has taken us through a really complex and disturbing case. We've seen accusations of corruption, abuse of power, and a lack of respect for human rights. But we've also seen incredible strength, unwavering love, and the power of people coming together.
We've explored the ins and outs of the legal system, the weaknesses of institutions, and the impact that injustice has on real lives. So what will you take away from this deep dive? Will Saime's fight inspire you? Will you be motivated to learn more about similar cases of injustice, both in Turkey and around the world?
We hope you'll check out the resources from the Conscience Foundation. Keep questioning the stories you're told, and think about how you can contribute to a more just and equitable world.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Human Rights Watch Turkey podcast. If you found value in the stories and discussions shared today, we encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. Your support helps amplify the voices of those in need and furthers our non-profit mission to foster a world with greater consciousness, empathy, and justice. Together, we can ensure these stories reach more people, inspiring action and awareness on a global scale. We look forward to having you with us again in the next episode, where we continue to delve into the human stories that demand to be heard. Until then, take care and stay mindful.